Do you want to go viral for copying somebody else? Do you want to get notoriety for doing something that somebody else already did? Or do you want to go viral for being you, for telling your story, for sharing the message that you feel like the world needs to hear?
Danny Jordan, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
How you doing, Tommy? Great to see you.
Could you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do?
Yeah, of course. My name is Danny Jordan, born and raised here in Southern California. That's where all my family is. I come from a huge family, tons of cousins. Every family event, whether it's the holidays or birthday parties, always a big event. Family's a huge part of what I do. It's a huge driving force behind the work that I do. Some people might know me for my work as a reality TV producer. I've worked on shows like Extreme Makeover Home Edition, Master Chef, Deal or No Deal. I even directed 60 episodes of the show Storage Wars, which people really love chatting about that one. And I launched a Christmas podcast a couple of years ago, and we are the #1 Christmas podcast in the world. We're called Christmas Countdown.
What inspired you to kind of take to social media and grow your platform there?
I grew up around the entertainment industry. My dad opened and ran the Burbank Bureau of CNBC, so I always grew up around storytellers. And my birth father, he's just one of the most animated people you will ever meet in your life. He's an entertainer. He sings barbershop music and worked at Disneyland as a Dapper Dan for many years. So I grew up around storytelling. And so I think once, I got into college and I wasn't playing baseball anymore because I'd played baseball all throughout my childhood for 14 years. And I thought that's what I was going to do with my life. And then I got into college and got into a boy band, and my life sort of took a hard right in a different direction. And I think for me, what I realized is that story is always at the heart of what I do, story and connection. And I think, in our world that we live in today, it's not just linear, that is where people are going to tell stories and where they're going to consume stories. I think so many people are active on social media, whether your preferred platform is Instagram or X or TikTok or whatever sort of the flavor of the week is. I think really what people latch onto on social media is what connects all of us as human beings, which is stories and storytelling. And so I look at what I put out there on Instagram and TikTok as a way of just sharing stories with a new audience.
That's a great answer and a lot to unpack there. I think I heard you say that you were in a boy band. Was that right? Did you start there?
Yeah, that's a true story. That's like, one that I like to pull out at, parties when you're trying to break the ice. I was in a boy band. I had auditioned for a show called Pop Stars, which was on the WB before it became the CW years ago. It was sort of their answer to, I don't know if your listeners know this show called Making the Band, which made this group called O-Town. The WB did their own version of that. And first season was an all-girl group called Eden's Crush. And then second season, they formed a mixed group, guys and girls, called Scene 23. And I auditioned for the show and, didn't make the final group, but did well and got contacted by this label and got put into a boy band. And it was kind of at the end of the boy band movement, so we sort of missed the boat on that one. But it was a cool experience, and honestly, it changed the trajectory of my life and connected me to a couple people who have remained very dear friends to this day. It's just, wild how life sort of, takes you on these twists and turns. And honestly, had I not made that decision to audition for that show, I'm very confident that I wouldn't be here where I am today.
I'm wondering, do you have any specific stories that you'd like to share with us? Anything that rises to the top that you'd like to share from interactions on your platforms?
One of the big things that I've been working on for the last almost 5 years now is an inclusive children's book series called The Capables. I started that series back in 2018 when my wife and I found out that our oldest daughter was going to be born with a disability, with an upper limb difference. And I wanted to create something, put something out into the world that would make this world more inclusive, more empowering, more educated when it comes to disability. And so this idea for this group of kids superheroes called The Capables, all of whom have a disability and whose powers are activated through empowerment, that it just popped in my head the day after we found out about Emerson and the disability that she was going to be born with. And as it pertains to social media, social media has become a big way for for me as an author, for us as a series to connect with people, whether it's individuals living with disabilities, whether it's parents of kids with disabilities. That's been a huge thing for me, is that, you know, I know that not every parent is wired like me. I know not every parent is necessarily like a type A person who has all like the questions and ideas ready when they go in to meet with the doctors or the specialists. And so I look at our social media platform as a way for me to connect with other parents and hopefully, you know, alleviate some of the fears and concerns that they might be experiencing as they're navigating a new situation that can be very, very challenging and very confusing and overwhelming. So it's really about just spreading this message of empowerment, which is, you know, that our differences are what give us our superpowers in life. So we work with organizations like Lucky Finn Project, which is one of the biggest limb difference awareness organizations in the world. We also have worked with an organization called Uniquely Me. There's another organization out in the UK called I Am Possible Foundation. And then there's actually one that we've been working with of late called Handtastic. They're based out of Germany. Because now we're in this phase with our books where, you know, we want these stories to be accessible to everybody. And for me, that means audiobooks, that means books in Braille, that means books in Spanish, books in German. We've also worked with the Dyslexia Research Foundation here in the US. The president of their board is on our advisory board. So, you know, we work with a lot of organizations to make sure that we're not just telling entertaining stories, but that our stories reflect authentic lived experience.
I'm wondering if you've had any experiences in your own life where people have read the book, and if you could share anything that anyone has said to you and after reading it.
We had a dad who reached out to me not long after our debut book, Ray's First Day, which was released, and that's the book that was inspired by my daughter Emerson. And he sent me a message, you know, saying that his daughter, who has an upper limb difference, had just started school. And he said, you know, my daughter has been having a really, really tough time lately, and her light had just felt like it had dimmed. And so he ordered a copy of our book, a physical copy, and then he sent me a message the next day, and he goes, you know, I just couldn't wait for the book to get here. I felt like she needed to read this story now. So he bought the Kindle version, and he cast it up on their TV that night after dinner. And he shared with me, he goes, I haven't seen my daughter smile like that in a really, really long time. And he goes, you can't understand what it means for me as a dad to see my child light up again. The driving force behind this from day one has been me as a dad wanting my daughter, that was the first commitment, was like, I just wanted Emerson, my daughter, to grow up with a book in her life where she could see herself as the hero. And even if that meant I just printed one copy of that first book that her and I could read together, where she would know that she could be the hero in the story. You start to understand that there are so many other people out there who want this in their lives and need this in their lives for one reason or another, and you realize that it's bigger than you. And it's a huge responsibility that I carry. It's why I'm so adamant about self-publishing our books, and why I'm so adamant about having an advisory board, is I want to make sure that, like I said, the kids aren't just seeing themselves, but then when they see it, they're like, oh yeah, that's the way I felt. And the only way you can do that is through having conversations with people who have lived that life. Because of Lucky Finn Project, they do this big like family picnic weekend every year, and they invite me out. I've been for the last 2 years to read our story as like the bedtime story for all the kids. And it blows me away when I get there and all the kids have brought their copy of Ray's First Day. And they bring it like, will you sign this for me? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And Emerson, my daughter's there, and she'll sign the book for them as well. It's like, it like overflows your heart, and you're like, this is what matters in life. This is the type of like human connection that matters.
What is like your process like when you wrote the book and developed the characters? Did you I know with Adventure Ted, I like wrote it and then like put it away for a long time. I like mind dumped it and then like came back to it later. Did you have an experience similar, or did you have any?
Yeah, I was terrified, Tommy, when I first started working on it. Because I was like, what am I doing? I've never done this before. Like I don't write children's books. I don't write books at all. But then I realized, I was like, I've made my living at that time professionally for like 11 years, I think it was at that point, that I've been telling stories professionally. And so I sort of had to get out of my head around this like imposter syndrome. There's a million reasons not to do something in life, right? And those million reasons can just like become roadblocks for any of us, no matter what you want to do, whether you want to write a children's book, you want to be a pilot, whatever, you want to book your dream vacation. There's a million reasons in your head. You're like, I shouldn't do this, I can't do this, whatever it might be. You just got to push all that to the side, or even if it's there, you just got to plow through it. And that was a huge part of it for me, because I just kept saying, I was like, well, how do I even write a children's book? And I realized, I was like, you know what? I don't have a publisher. I don't have any requirements upon me to write a book in a very specific way. I can just write the book that feels like needs to come out of me. What I would, encourage everyone else out there to do is, like, when you take on something new that you've never done before, the beauty is that you get to do it in your own way. And I oftentimes, almost always believe that, like, you doing it in your way is exactly the way that it needs to be, because we already have the way that Tommy has done it. We already have the way that I have done it. But how are you going to do it? Because that's what's going to make it unique. Do you want to go viral for copying somebody else? Do you want to get notoriety for doing something that somebody else already did? Or do you want to go viral for being you, for telling your story, for sharing the message that you feel like the world needs to hear?
Is there any advice you can offer for someone like that who's going through that and kind of stuck in their own way?
Sometimes we can get so deep into the weeds that it feels just too overwhelming, and we go, I can't do this. This is too much. Well, here's the good news. You don't have to do it all right now. You really only have to do one thing right now. So do that one thing, and do it the best that you can possibly do it. And then tomorrow do another thing. And then the next week do another thing. Because when I got to the end of writing that first book and getting that first shipment of books to my garage at my house, I stood there and I looked at all these boxes, and I thought back upon every single step I had taken along the way and everything that I didn't know how to do until I figured it out. So get out of your head about the macro and just focus on the micro right now. And maybe that one thing is just you telling yourself in this moment, I can do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I can do it. A lot of times when I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking to you, because we see this facade out in the world of everybody's got it together all the time. And that is a lie. There's not one single person I believe in this world who has it together every single moment of every single day. I have my struggles that I have gone through with, anxiety and depression and all these sorts of things. We all have things that we navigate every single day. So when I say just do one thing today, I'm speaking to you who's listening right now. I'm speaking to Tommy, but I'm also telling myself, Danny, you don't have to do 1,000 things today to be successful, to be fulfilled, to contribute to a ripple of change. You can just do one thing. That's it.
Is there anything that you're in the middle of working on now, or a future project that you'd like to share with us?
I'm fortunate that, I still get to work almost every day as a TV producer. I'm currently working on, bringing back the show Extreme Makeover Home Edition, which will be coming to ABC next year. As we say, we're coming home to ABC, which we're all very, very excited about. And obviously we have Christmas Countdown, which is coming back for season 3 this holiday season, which we're excited about. That idea for that show, which has become the #1 Christmas podcast in the world, started on a Facebook thread where my co-host wrote 160 days till Christmas or whatever it was. And I said, or my wife tagged me in and she goes, oh, you sound like my husband. And I said, we're crazy for Christmas. That sounds like a podcast. And then we spoke the next day, and the next week we recorded the first episode out of our garages on Riverside, like we are recording here today. And now 2 years later, we've been downloaded in 180 countries around the world, and Hallmark Channel is a big sponsor of the show. It's just like, you just got to listen, and you got to take that first step forward. So those are the big things I'm working on, is, the Christmas podcast and the podcast network that we're growing now, and Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and just trying to be the best dad, that I can possibly be, and just showing up for my kids as much as I can, and not getting so deep into the work that I lose the connection with the why and who and what I'm doing it for.
Danny Jordan, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing such important insights into your journey with all of us. And we wish you a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season and a Happy New Year. Happy healthy.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone out there. And Tommy and team, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a blast. And pick up Tommy's book. I have it on, my kid has it on her shelf in her bedroom. It's so beautifully illustrated. If you don't have a copy, do yourself a favor and get one, because it's a really, really fun read.
Appreciate that, Dan.